the arena of blood, where glory was fed by death. They said Rome was eternal. They said its walls would never fall, its legions would never break, its emperors would never kneel. But even Rome needed spectacle, and spectacle required blood. When Emperor Vespasian ordered the construction of the Flavian Amphitheater in 72 AD, he did not call it the Colosseum. That name would come later. To him, it was a symbol, a gift to the people after years of civil war, bread and games, panem et circenses. The people had been restless. The empire had been bleeding from within. And nothing unites a fractured nation like shared violence. The foundations. The amphitheater was built on the grounds of Nero's private lake, a reminder that Rome belonged to the people now, not a tyrant. At least that was the story. But beneath the drained lake, there were older things. Laborers dug deep into the earth, stone upon stone, arch upon arch. Thousands of slaves carried marble, limestone, travertine. Many did not survive. When a slave collapsed, he was dragged aside. When one died, he was replaced. History does not record their names, but the ground remembers weight. And when the first stone of the arena floor was laid, it rested on soil that had already tasted death. The first games. In 80 AD, Titus inaugurated the amphitheater with 100 days of games. 100 days, thousands of animals slaughtered, hundreds of gladiators killed. The Roman crowd did not whisper, they roared. 50,000 voices rising like thunder. Gladiators entered beneath the sun. They saluted the emperor. Ave Caesar! They fought for honor, for survival, for freedom. But freedom was rare. The sand drank everything. Blood disappeared quickly in the heat, or so they thought. The machinery beneath. Beneath the arena floor was the hypogeum, a labyrinth of tunnels, cages, lifts, and wooden platforms. From below, beasts would rise suddenly through trap doors. Lions, tigers, bears. Sometimes condemned criminals. Sometimes men who had never seen Rome before that day. The system was brilliant, engineered precision. But those who worked below began to notice something strange. It was subtle at first. Animals would resist entering certain tunnels. Torches would flicker without wind. And sometimes, when the arena was empty, there were sounds. Not voices, not echoes. Something like breathing. But no one reported it, because Rome did not reward superstition. The gladiator. His name was Cassian. He had been a soldier once, captured in a border conflict and sold into the arena. He was not the strongest, not the fastest, but he survived, not because he was ruthless, because he listened. Cassian learned the rhythm of the arena, the crowd's mood, the opponent's hesitation, the moment before steel moved. And he noticed something else. Sometimes, just before a fatal strike, there was a silence, a pressure in the air, as if something leaned closer. The first time he felt it, he dismissed it as fear. The 10th time, he was no longer certain. The emperor watches. From his elevated seat, the emperor watched with calculated calm. The arena was more than entertainment. It was control. When the crowd demanded death, he could grant mercy. When the crowd demanded mercy, he could grant death. Power was not in the sword. It was in the thumb. But even emperors feel unease. There were nights when the arena seemed too quiet, when the sand looked darker, when the echoes lingered longer than they should. And during one particular execution, under a sky heavy with heat, something happened. A condemned man was thrown to the beasts. He did not run. He did not scream. He knelt and whispered something into the sand. The lion approached, stopped, and for a moment, just a moment, the entire arena fell silent. The crowd leaned forward. Then chaos resumed. But Cassian, watching from the shadows of the preparation gate, saw something no one else noticed. The sand shifted, not from movement, from below. Blood as ritual. Rome did not believe it was performing rituals. They believed they were enforcing justice, honoring gods, celebrating strength. But repetition creates pattern. Pattern creates meaning, and meaning creates power. Day after day, year after year, blood soaked the same ground, under the same sun, before the same roaring masses, and something began to collect, not in sight, not in form, but in presence. The night shift workers assigned to clean the arena after games often spoke of a heaviness. They worked in teams, carrying buckets of water to wash the sand. But sometimes the water turned darker than it should. Sometimes the sand beneath was damp long after it had dried. One worker swore he heard footsteps behind him, though he was alone. Another claimed he felt fingers brush his ankle beneath the sand. Most drank heavily to silence such thoughts. Rome did not tolerate weakness, and the Colosseum did not forgive imagination. Cassian's realization. One evening, after surviving yet another duel, Cassian knelt to touch the sand, his opponent's blood still warm. He closed his eyes, and for the first time, he felt it clearly. Not a voice, not a vision, but a weight, a watching, as if the arena itself was alive. Not benevolent, not malicious, just aware. He opened his eyes quickly. The feeling faded, but something had changed. From that day on, Cassian no longer fought only for survival. He fought with the knowledge that he was being witnessed, not only by 50,000 Romans, but by something beneath them all. Rome celebrated victory. The Colosseum became legend. Tourists traveled miles to witness its games. Emperors used it to secure loyalty. The empire seemed stronger than ever. But under the sand, the ground was no longer silent, and the arena was no longer empty when night fell. The blood had fed something, and it was patient. The emperor who needed blood. When spectacle became hunger. Rome had grown accustomed to the roar. The Colosseum no longer shocked the people, it fed them. The games were no longer celebration, they were necessity. And at the center of it all sat the emperor. At first, he had ruled with balance, measured mercy, calculated cruelty. He understood that spectacle was control. But something shifted after the 100th execution, after the 1,000th animal, after the countless bodies that fell onto the same sand. He began attending every game, not out of duty, out of desire. The change. The emperor no longer blinked when blood sprayed across the arena. He leaned forward, closer, as if he were listening. His advisors noticed. He spoke less during councils. He delayed political decisions. But he never missed a game. He began demanding longer battles, no quick deaths, no mercy unless the crowd screamed for it. Even then, he hesitated. He began enjoying the moment before death, the silence, the anticipation, the instant when thousands held their breath. Because in that moment, he felt something. The first night. One night, after a particularly brutal series of executions, the emperor dismissed his guards. He returned alone. The Colosseum was empty. Moonlight cut across the sand. He walked slowly to the center of the arena. No cheers, no music, only wind. He stood where the gladiators stood, and for the first time, he felt it. A vibration, a pulse beneath his feet. Not loud, not violent, but steady, alive. He closed his eyes, and something answered. Not in words, but in sensation. Approval. The obsession. From that night on, the emperor began altering the games. More prisoners, more executions, more exotic beasts. He ordered battles during eclipses, during storms, at dusk when shadows stretched long across the sand. He began speaking of destiny, of Rome's divine right, of the arena as proof that Rome stood above gods and men. But in private, he returned to the sand, again and again and again. He would kneel, touch the ground, and wait. Sometimes he felt warmth, sometimes pressure, sometimes nothing. And when he felt nothing, he grew angry. Cassian watches. Cassian had survived longer than most. The crowd now knew his name. They chanted it. He should have felt pride. Instead, he felt unease. The games were changing. Opponents were no longer matched fairly. Executions were staged to prolong suffering. Animals were starved before release. And something else. The emperor's eyes. They were no longer watching for control. They were searching. One day, after a brutal duel, Cassian locked eyes with the emperor, and for a fraction of a second, the emperor did not see him. He looked past him, as if watching something else, behind him, beneath him. The advisors. Whispers began spreading through the palace. The emperor slept less. He ate irregularly. He dismissed concerns. He ordered secret excavations beneath the arena floor. Not public renovations, private tunnels. He claimed it was for engineering improvements, but the workers were told something strange. Dig deeper. How deep, they asked. Until you feel it. No one understood what that meant, but they dug. The incident. During one afternoon game, something happened that Rome could not explain. A gladiator struck his opponent cleanly across the throat. Blood spilled. The man fell. The crowd roared. And then, the sand moved. Just slightly. A ripple. Like breath under cloth. It lasted only a second. Most dismissed it as imagination, but dozens saw it. Cassian saw it, and so did the emperor. And this time, the emperor smiled. The descent. The secret tunnels beneath the Colosseum went deeper than the hypogeum, deeper than structural foundations. The emperor insisted. He began visiting the excavation site personally, by torchlight. The air below grew heavy. thick. Workers complained of headaches, nausea, dreams. Several claimed they heard whispers. One disappeared. His body was never found. Officially, he fled. Unofficially, the emperor ordered silence, because the deeper they dug, the stronger the pulse became. The emperor alone. One night, after dismissing all guards, the emperor descended alone, torch in hand, breath shallow. He reached the lowest chamber. There, beneath layers of stone and earth, the sand was damp, warm. He knelt, placed his palm against it, and this time, the response was undeniable. A surge, not physical, but internal. A rush of certainty, of power, of importance. He understood something then. The arena was not feeding Rome. Rome was feeding it. And it was feeding him back. He began to believe the Colosseum was a living altar, and he, its chosen priest. Cassian's fear. Cassian began dreaming of sand, of sinking, of something rising beneath his feet during battle. He noticed that the emperor's presence during games seemed to intensify the atmosphere. Fights grew bloodier, the crowd more frenzied, as if the arena itself amplified emotion. One night, after a match, Cassian stayed behind intentionally. He waited until the arena emptied. He stepped into the center and listened. At first, nothing. Then, a faint tremor, like a heartbeat, not his own. And for the first time, he felt fear not of death, but of the ground beneath him. The shift in Rome. Outside the arena, Rome prospered. Victories continued. The empire expanded. But something changed in the people. They demanded more, longer fights, slower deaths. The games grew darker. Executions became theatrical. Public mercy grew rare. The crowd's appetite mirrored the emperor's, and perhaps the arena's. The final scene of Part 2. The emperor stood once more in the center of the Colosseum at night. He removed his sandals, stepped barefoot onto the sand, closed his eyes, and whispered, "Speak." The sand shifted. This time, not subtly. A shallow depression formed around his feet, just slightly, as if the arena acknowledged him. Above, the moon passed behind clouds. The Colosseum fell into shadow, and in that darkness, the emperor began to laugh, not with joy, but with understanding. He no longer ruled Rome. He served the arena. The night the arena answered, when Rome fed the darkness too long. Rome did not collapse in a single day. It rotted slowly, from power, from pride, from excess, and from blood. The emperor no longer held councils, he held games. Senators whispered in marble halls. Generals waited for commands that never came. But the arena never slept. The emperor demanded a final spectacle bigger than anything before, not to celebrate victory, but to seal destiny. The Great Eclipse. Astronomers warned him a solar eclipse was approaching, a rare one, a shadow across the sun. The emperor smiled. He ordered the grandest games in Rome's history, 50 gladiators, exotic beasts from across the empire, mass executions, and a promise to the crowd. You will witness something Rome has never seen. They did not understand. He did. The arena at dusk. The day arrived. The Colosseum overflowed, 50,000 bodies, breath heavy in summer heat. Cassian stood among the fighters, older now, scarred, but alive. He felt it immediately. The air was different, thicker, as if the arena were waiting. The emperor entered, not in royal robes, but in dark crimson. He did not sit immediately. He stood, watching the sand. The first blood. The games began. Fights erupted, steel clashed, beasts roared, men screamed, the crowd roared louder. And as the eclipse began, the light dimmed, shadows stretched unnaturally long across the sand. Cassian struck down his opponent, blood spilled, and this time it did not disappear. It spread too quickly, soaking downward, as if drawn. The crowd's roar faltered. For a moment, there was confusion. The ground opens. Then it happened. The sand did not ripple. It sank. The center of the arena depressed inward, slowly at first, then violently. A tremor shot through the Colosseum. Stone cracked. Statues trembled. The crowd began to scream, not in excitement, but in fear. From beneath the sand came a sound, not a voice, not a growl, but a resonance, deep, ancient. The tunnels below collapsed, the hidden chambers broke open, and the emperor, he stepped forward, arms raised. As it was fed, so it shall rise. He was not afraid, he was triumphant. The panic. The arena floor split. A massive fissure tore through the sand. Gladiators fell screaming into darkness. Beasts fled in terror. The crowd surged toward exits, but stone stairways began to fracture. The Colosseum shook like a living thing. Cassian struggled to keep his footing. Dust filled the air. The eclipse reached totality. Darkness swallowed Rome. And in that darkness, the sound intensified, not rising, but expanding, as if the arena itself were breathing. The vision. Those who survived later told different stories. Some said they saw faces in the dust. Others claimed shadows moved against gravity. Some swore they felt hands beneath the sand pulling at their ankles. But the strangest reports came from the senators seated high above. They said that for a brief moment, the crowd stopped screaming and stared downward as one, as if commanded, as if witnessing something only they could see. Then chaos resumed. The emperor's fate. Cassian saw him, standing at the edge of the fissure, laughing, calling to something below. "You are awake." But the arena did not answer as he expected. The ground beneath his feet collapsed. Not dramatically, not violently, simply gave way. The emperor vanished into the darkness. No scream, no final decree, just absence. The fissure sealed partially after, not completely, but enough. The eclipse ended. Light returned, and what remained was ruin. The aftermath. The Colosseum did not fully fall. It stood, cracked, scarred. Sections collapsed, walls broken, but the structure remained. Rome did not recover from that day. Confidence fractured, rumors spread across the empire. Some called it divine punishment, some called it engineering failure, some called it mass hysteria. But those who were there knew better. Cassian survived. He left Rome soon after. He never fought again. And until his death, he carried one certainty. The arena had not destroyed Rome. Rome had awakened the arena. Final image. Years later, the Colosseum stood silent. Tourists walked through its broken arches. Grass grew where sand once drank blood. But at night, when wind moves through stone, some swear they hear it. Not screams, not voices, a low, patient vibration. Waiting, because blood remembers, and the ground never forgets. The silence has spoken. If this legend moved you, leave a like, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the Silent Pantheon. The gods are not finished yet.